I wanted to make a short video articulating the intention behind setting up this channel, the intention behind doing various conversations with people, the intention behind speaking about these things at all. The truth is that at this point in my life, I honestly cannot see myself doing anything else besides exploring these matters that I explore in this channel. Because if I look at the world, there is war, there is pollution, there is climate change, there is a lot of improvement that could be done within the educational system, within the healthcare system, in our everyday lives. We can do something about it. And to me, it seems like exploring what is the truth behind these questions. I feel like the exploration of the truth behind things is perhaps one of the greatest things that we can do. To ask yourselves, what is actually happening? Why is this actually the case? Or what is the root cause of something? And I honestly cannot see myself doing anything else at this point in my life besides exploring these things, learning about them, writing about them. And I guess whatever I explore, there is an urge to express it somehow. There's an urge to speak about it. There's an urge to talk to people about it. And I guess this channel and everything else that I put out through media is just my way of expressing things. At first, I was quite hesitant to even set up a channel in the first place. I wanted to remain silent. But there is an urge to speak about this. There is a desire to do so. And I'll be simply suppressing it if I didn't do something about it. So here I am, making this very awkward video about how I feel about certain things. And I don't really want to make this channel about the people, about me, but I want to make it about the ideas themselves, about the questions themselves. And hopefully we can all inquire into these things for ourselves and try to understand these things for ourselves. Because ultimately, all understanding must boil down to ourselves. We must understand things for ourselves deeply. Deeply. Otherwise, we're just following. And that's what I'm concerned about. I guess I'm a student. I guess I'm just somebody who's really interested in learning about these things, learning about life, exploring life, particularly the inward quality of life. Because to me, it seems like that is the foundation of a good society, of a new society, you could even say. Because whatever we create outwardly is obviously just a reflection of our inward states. And if we are fearful, our actions are going to be based off fear. If we do things out of hatred, our actions are going to be out of hatred. So I feel like unless we address the fundamental problem, which is the understanding of our own minds, how are we ever going to bring about a new kind of world? And I don't know why we don't demand a new kind of society, a new kind of living. Because to me, it seems like there's an immense capacity within humans that needs to be explored, understood, and expressed, whatever is unique to that individual. And perhaps that's the reason why I do this. Ultimately, I'm not entirely sure where I'm going, but I just know that at this moment, this feels good. It feels right to do this kind of thing, to explore these topics, to have discussions about these things. And that's why I do this. And I seriously thought about, how do you change the world? If we're concerned about change, if we are concerned about changing the world, how does it begin? How do we actually do it? And to me, it seems like our whole problem is that we don't cooperate between one another. Is that we don't listen to one another. is that we don't try to understand one another. And more importantly, we don't try to understand the essence behind things, the truth behind things. For example, it is clear that nationalities divide people. If we look at war, that's what it is. A conflict between two nations, a conflict between two nationalities fighting each other. If we look at the case of religion, it's also the case that religion divides people. We have our God, you have your God. We have our practices, you have your practices. But I wonder then, what happens if we go to the root of religion? What happens if we go to the very essence? Now, I think, to my knowledge, there's over 1,000 religions throughout the world. There's probably more. But the basic fact is that there is perhaps 5 or 6 core religions throughout the world. Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Hinduism, Islam. But we have to realize one simple thing, that perhaps the intention behind those religions wasn't to set up a religion. Perhaps the religions were actually just speaking about questions that plague all of us as humans. Questions of what is life? Of what am I to do in this life? Of what is a good life? And essentially just questions of philosophy too. But I think the trouble is when we identify, when we cling to a certain ideology or belief without trying to understand why we do so in the first place. So to go back on the question of how do we bring about a new world, or how do we change the world? To me, it seems like we must first and foremost understand ourselves, our own inward quality, our own inward state. Because without that, what kind of change is that? And we also have to look at the truth of things, to dissect every question, every ideology, every religion, every philosophy, and to understand what is the essence behind it. And unless that is done, unless we do this together, unless we think about this together, how can we possibly cooperate? And the reason why I want to have discussions with other people is because I don't want to just speak. I want to have dialogues. I want to have conversations. I want to be open about this and see what else am I missing? What am I not seeing? And that's why I enjoy dialogue. I enjoy conversations. I enjoy seeing the limitations of my own particular thinking or anyone else's thinking. And obviously, I'm not going to be the best communicator. I'm not going to be any of these things. I'm simply just somebody who's interested in exploring these things. And I just felt like it was necessary to somehow talk about it. And these days, if you go to the streets and talk about these things, it's not really common to do. So media is a good way of expressing how someone feels. And obviously, it's a little bit awkward to make these kind of videos and to make them public. So, and this is my first video of this kind. So I'm really not sure what kind of feedback it will be. But the truth is that it's been with me for the past few years to speak about these things, to talk about these things. And during COVID, I took the time to go for long walks and to explore these questions and to look at what other people have been saying about these things. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. But at the end of the day, yes, of course, we need to develop new technologies, explore our scientific capacities. But if we're doing all these things with a certain limitation, if we're doing all these things with assumptions, if we're doing these things while destroying other beings around us, then what kind of advancement is that? And if we look at the problems that seem to face all of us, our own inward problems such as fear, anxiety, worry, stress, confusion. There is a possibility in understanding these things, to be free from these things. Doesn't mean that it's always going to be the case, but it could be. It could be. And I'm just simply interested in exploring the root cause of these things, why they occur in the first place. Can we be free of these things? And to me, the answer is of course we can. And I feel also that if we do understand our own inward quality, if we do understand our minds, if we do understand what the mind is in the first place, whatever we do outwardly will also be a reflection of that. It has to be. How could it be otherwise? And since society is just a bunch of individuals interacting with one another, that's what our society will look like. That's what our world will look like. But if we understood the nature of this existence, the nature of life, then perhaps, well, then we'll see what happens. But it certainly makes things more interesting. And I do feel like every single one of us has this talent or gift or capacity that is there to be explored and understood and expressed in whatever way it comes. To briefly put it, I feel like we must understand something and express that understanding in whatever way comes natural to us. If we look at the world's greatest people that we admire, Einstein, Elon Musk, Buddha, just any individual, they obviously understood something. And whatever they wanted to naturally understand is they excelled at it, because you're going to excel at something that you love to pursue, that you love to understand, just for the sake of understanding something. And then naturally, when you understand something, you're going to express it, whether it's through communicating, whether it's through creating a certain product, whether it's through creating a certain service, whether it's doing nothing at all, perhaps. But we're going to express whatever we understand somehow, some way, into the world. And I feel like it's important to understand what is it that we truly want to understand in the first place. What are we truly curious about? What are we interested by? What questions plague us? And I also feel that we share the same questions. We want to find out questions, such as, how can we live a happy life? How can we live a good life? How can we be peaceful? What is peace? What is God? What is life? Perhaps some of us haven't been exposed to such questions, but if we look deep down, they're probably there. So that's it then. I guess I'm just exploring questions through whatever is convenient at the time. It may be a conversation, it may be making a video like this, but essentially all I'm doing is exploring questions. And fundamentally, I'm concerned with, why can't we live in peace? Why can't we just get along? Because to me, that seems like the whole issue. And it begins with dialogue, it begins with discussions, it begins with talking about it, it begins with ourselves, it begins by understanding these things for ourselves. And this is just my way of doing it. Thank you for listening.